Hi everyone, thank you for being here. So today I'm doing my monthly wrap-up. So I'm gonna be talking about everything I read in July, whether it was Kindle or physical book. I didn't finish any audiobooks in July, so I'll just be talking about Kindle and physical. First, I always like to have a little cozy drink with me when I read my books, so I have to let you know I'm drinking an iced matcha with soy milk and sugar-free vanilla. And if you're having a cozy little drink or a little snack, comment down below because I'm nosy and I would like to see what you guys are eating or drinking. So the first book I read in July is called How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie Cruz. I really love this book. It made me emotional as well, but it also made me cry. It made me laugh. It was just a really good book. I definitely recommend. So this follows Cara Romero, and she's a Dominican woman in her 50s living in New York City. She's recently been laid off from her job at the factory. So she's going to these job agencies where they help you make your resumes. They help you out with interview sessions, and she has to go to a couple of them. So through these sessions she reveals a lot about her life. She almost takes these sessions that are meant to be about building a portfolio and strengthening her interviewing skills. She uses it more of a therapy session. I found this book so comforting because I am Dominican. Seeing the way she spoke reminded me so much of my Dominican mother and aunties, and her sense of humor was exactly like my mom's sense of humor. A lot of the experiences she had, my mother and her sisters had as well, coming from the Dominican Republic at a young age and then sacrificing a lot to build a life here. So a lot of parts I felt very sentimental. There was a lot of nostalgia as well. I loved how there was a lot of Dominican slang in it. It's just really fun to see your culture that you don't really see many books written about, and seeing it in writing was just so validating. Just seeing that we all have the same experiences. I've read her other book as well, Dominicana, and I loved it so much, so this is why I gave this one a shot, and I'm really happy I did. I definitely want to try and find more books by Latina authors of color. I just feel like I relate so much to them. Just seeing that they also struggle with a lot of the things I have struggled with in my past as well. So I definitely recommend, especially if you've never heard of Angie Cruz or ever read any of her books, I really think you would enjoy this one. So after that book, I read Really Good Actually, and it's by Monica Hasey, or Hasey, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. First of all, I am obsessed with this cover, and that might be the reason I decided to read this book and purchase it was because of the cover. But I did enjoy it. It was a good read. This follows Maggie. She's 29 and she is a new divorcee. So she got married young, and you just see her navigate this breakup, and it affects her greatly. But it not only affects her, it affects her friendships, it affects her family life and everything. And for her, that's all she knew was her ex-husband, so she has to try and navigate the world as a single woman. So we get to see her go on dates, we get to see her living alone, trying to find a place that she can afford, because she doesn't make as much money without her husband. So I thought it was very funny. She has a good sense of humor. If you've read Good Material by Dolly Alderton, this book reminds me a lot of this. Literally the female version of, I can't remember his name in that book, but it's the female version of it. It takes place in Canada, but I feel like the author might have been British because it felt like there was a lot of British humor in it, or just the way she worded things, even though I love anything British. So it did remind me a lot of that. I did like it. The character, she was a little annoying at times. You know, she had very self-destructive tendencies. She was kind of mean to her friends, but throughout we see her journey throughout, and it does, it all works out in the end. But it was a good book. It was a good read. I gave it 3 stars. And I forgot to mention, for How to Not Drown in a Glass of Water, I gave it 4 stars. So after that, I read on my Kindle, and I ended up reading Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. And this book honestly was such a surprise to me because I had no idea I was going to love it as much as I did. It was so good, and I'm still thinking about this book, and I read it in the earlier days of July. So it was just incredible. And I think she's coming out with Rebel Witch next year. So I will be sitting there the second it drops. I will be grabbing it. Oh my god, it was so good. I loved everything about it, honestly. So it follows Rune and Gideon, and Rune is a witch and Gideon is a witch hunter. So you can kind of guess the plot. But it definitely has that enemies to lovers trope. It has that forbidden romance trope, but it was just really well done. So Rune, she's a witch, and this takes place during the Regency era, I'm pretty sure. And I don't think it's a spoiler, but she has a name called the Crimson Moth, where she's been helping witches that have been held captive by the Blood Guards. She's been helping them escape. It was a little dark what they would do to the witches they captured, so definitely like a bit of trigger warnings for that. It was really sad to see. It definitely reminded me a lot of like the Salem witch trials. That was really close to it. I really like the new take of how she would use her magic because I've never read it like that before. So I don't want to say because I don't want to ruin the book, but it was just very different. I really enjoyed it. It had me like not wanting to put the book down. I couldn't wait to read like the next chapter. I was pleasantly surprised by The Heartless Hunter. Next, I read Funny Story by Emily Henry. And honestly, I think this is my favorite out of all of Emily Henry's books. I've read all of them. Before this one came out, I used to say Book Lovers was my favorite, but I think this takes first spot. It was so good. I love the characters in it. Daphne and Miles, they're the two main characters. They are my favorite people ever. And it was just so funny, witty. Their banter was so great. So this follows Daphne. She's a librarian and she is engaged to a man named Peter. When suddenly Peter calls off their engagement. Peter proceeds to basically run away with Miles's girlfriend. I think her name was Petra, and claiming that they have been best friends forever and it was kind of like childhood lovers. So they basically just like ditched them and left and decided that they were going to plan a wedding and get married. So that left Miles and Daphne on their own. And Daphne, of course, couldn't stay and live with Peter, so she had nowhere to stay, but Miles said that she could rent at his apartment, so they became roommates. So through this, you know, a friendship blooms, a romance blossoms. Get to see how they navigate their heartbreak. The big part of it as well is that they decide to fake date as well to try and make Peter and Petra jealous. So kind of like, okay, you guys are dating, so are we. So you can kind of guess what happens with that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I love anything Emily Henry writes. Her writing is so good. It's just so good. And she is like the queen of banter. Miles is probably my favorite book boyfriend as well because he was so sweet and understanding and like supportive. I think we need to see more love interests like that. Like, you know, the grumpy sunshine trope, it's cute and all, but like when the guy's like grumpy all the time, I'm just like, okay. But he was like a golden retriever, just like a happy, like sweet guy. It was just so cute. And after I read again on my Kindle, I read The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden. So that is the third book in the Housemaid series. So if you haven't read the first two, I don't really want to ruin too much of it. But basically, Millie from the first one where she was a housemaid, I can't really explain it too much because it'll get a little confusing. But in this one, Millie, it's like a couple years into her life. So she has kids, she has a husband, and she moves into a new neighborhood. And of course, something nefarious is afoot. So we just are trying to figure out like what's going on. You know, some people can't be trusted, weird things are going on, gossip about the neighbors, all of that stuff. It was pretty good. I gave it a 3-star rating. I got a little bored in the middle of it just because it just feels a little repetitive at this point. But I did like that she made it a little funnier compared to her other two. Like some of the things she said actually made me laugh. Her writing, I wasn't really vibing with it that much in this one for some reason. I don't think her writing changed from the first and second, but I don't know. It just seemed like a lot more simple. But really with these books, it's more plot based than the writing. Really, it's just more about what's gonna happen and like the thrill of it. So, but yeah, it was okay. And the last book I read in July is called Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I adored this book as well. I had a good reading month, honestly, because all the books are really good. But yes, so Half a Soul follows Theodora. They call her Dora. And this takes place in the Regency area as well. So think Bridgerton vibes, all of that. So this has that magical realism. It's very whimsical. So Theodora, she comes across a fairy and he curses her and takes half her soul. With half of her soul being taken, it causes her to almost lack emotion. She doesn't really feel much or anything, or she doesn't notice when things are dangerous, or like almost like she doesn't know social cues. So she's a little bit strange. That causes her a lot of trouble, especially in this era. She lives with her cousin Vanessa and her aunt. And the big goal at this time is always trying to marry your daughters off by the time they're 18. But with Theodora, it's been very hard just because she's a little off-putting to some people. They don't really understand why she's a little strange, but she can't help it. She doesn't really know how to react to things. So she ends up in London with her sister Vanessa. Vanessa's mother is still trying to marry her off. And through this, Theodora meets Elias, and he's like a Lord Sorcerer, almost like a magician, I guess they call him. And he is very enthralled by Theodora. He's like, she's a little strange, but through this, they become friends. They form a friendship. And when he finds out that she's cursed, he wants to try and help her and see if he can get her other soul back. I thought this book was so sweet, especially because she doesn't really have social cues, so she seems to always say the wrong thing. He was very patient with her, and he thought she was very interesting, and he would always compliment her and just be really like understanding. I also thought she was very sweet, even though she had half a soul where she can't really feel feelings as intensely, so it would be kind of dim, or like she'll kind of tell herself, like through her years, she would tell herself, oh, I should react this way to that, you know, like certain situations. But you could see that even then, she was still always trying to do the right thing. So she would kind of tell herself in certain situations, oh, I should be afraid, I should act scared about this, or I should act appalled about this. I guess with so many years of like trying to act normal, she basically knew how she would have to react, but she never like felt those feelings. But yeah, it was a very sweet read. I really liked it, and I definitely want to read the other two books in the series. They're like interconnected standalones. So yeah, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. So that's everything I read in July. I really enjoyed all the books I read. Some months can be so rough for me and I end up falling into a reading slump, but this month it was really good. I feel like every book I read I really enjoyed. Like there was nothing I was too disappointed about. So if you would like to as well, you can comment down below any of the books you read, any of your favorites, and I'll leave my Instagram here. We could chat on there as well. And it was really nice to have you here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope you have a great day.